Hi, I'm KatBel, and today I'll be doing over this jacket. I'm going to be taking off the sleeves and using those for something else. I have these tulip paints, and I have white for the base, this glow-in-the-dark for outline, and I have for Sailor Venus, Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter. And I have this silver for like accents and stuff. I'm going to start by cutting the sleeves off, so painting will be for later. I'm doing about a 1/4 inch, and I'm doing it on the side that's away from the rest of the jacket. That way, even when it's frayed and goes through the wash and stuff, it won't fray any further than that first line, basically. And I do like a little bit of a gap because I will be distressing this just a bit to give it a kind of feathery, in a sense, edge. I just think it looks more interesting that way. And like I said, if it frays a little bit extra, it will never go past that sewn part. So the next thing I'll be working on is the collar. So I popped the first couple buttons so that it would lay flat. And then I used the seam line to make the first line since Sailor Moon has 2. And I did run into a small issue with the first line because the seam caused some of the surrounding cloth to bunch a little, and the paint wanted to like follow those grooves, and it just made some areas a little bit thicker, and it's hard to get like a perfectly straight and crisp line. But the whole vibe is supposed to be punk anyway, so it didn't really matter that much. And I just went back and forth with the white paint, just kind of fill in as much as I could, and then eventually just went in with a second line. And once everything was done, I did go over this slightly with the glow-in-the-dark paint. And the glow-in-the-dark paint, as you could see from the beginning, is kind of purpley on its own. So I didn't put too many layers, so it does need like a lot of light, and it doesn't shine very brightly in the darkness, but you can kind of see it there in the end. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how the lines came out, even though they weren't as crisp as I would hope. So here I'm going in with the second line, and it's basically just like eyeballing it. I did not measure, I just started at the one corner and then went down to the base, and I just kept going at it. And the denim really did soak up a lot of the paint, which is why it's like you keep seeing me dip back into that. And this is about 10 times the speed, so it was a long time I was working on this. Okay, with the lines done, it's time to move on to the back. So I'm trying to do a roughly hand-sized design, and as you can see from like the reference image I'm using, it will be the Imperium Silver Crystal, and it's specifically the flower crystal version. And I did just kind of slightly measure just to find where the midpoint of the back is so that it's roughly centered. And I decided to go in with the paint kind of more freestyle since it is just kind of a geometric shape. There's not, geometry. There's a lot of math involved, but I wasn't about to do all that. I just figured out where the top points of the first 3 or so petals would be, and just kind of build the flower out from there. And I decided to just go in with the white first to build up the base so that I don't use up a lot of the different colored paints. I mean, it's not like the colored paints are more expensive, but this is just the method I decided to go with. So you can just see me building up the flower shape, and I specifically like this design for the Imperium Silver Crystal because I really liked that movie when I was little, and also it's a lot more interesting than just the regular crystal because it is just kind of a round white colored thing, whereas this one, it has an interesting shape. Now, I did decide to go with a more colorful version, and the reference image that I'm using is actually some sort of fan art. I don't remember who the original artist is. I can probably Google it and put it in the description, but I just liked how it incorporated more of the colors rather than just the plain, like I said, white crystal. And here I am just building up the base some more, once again, so I don't waste a bunch of paint later. And I do kind of like the crystal at this point. It looks kind of cool just like this with the crisp white edges with the denim towards the center of the rose. And if I was doing a Princess Serenity look, I might have stopped here. And I might do another version of the jacket where I do that, where I just kind of leave it at this point. But for this particular project, I did have an end goal in mind of Sailor Moon. And I know, like, they're the same character, but also they're kind of not, if you think of the whole reincarnation thing. Kind of like how Princess Serenity and Neo Queen Serenity technically I feel like are two different characters, because the one's more mature and obviously the older version of the other. It's kind of like how like Rose Quartz and Pink Diamond are two different characters. I mean, also they look completely different, but it's kind of the same idea that I have for this. Anyway, here I am going in with the colors, so I'm just starting off by doing each individual color in the different sections, and basically just going in with just that base and not doing any kind of shading or anything. Plan is to do that later. I did lighten up the green a little bit because the pink was, you know, obviously pastel, the blue as well. Yellow, there's not really much to do. It's like yellow is kind of just yellow. Pastel yellow is just slightly paler, I guess, but yeah, there's not that much big of a difference. But the green was very dark, I felt, so I did kind of lighten that up a bit. So I did adjust some of the colors. But basically just going in with the base, and you do see me kind of wiping away some of the excess paint. The excess paint also becomes an issue later, and I didn't actually record parts of that just because I was like pretty much already done, and I just had, you know, to cover up my shame, I just didn't record that section. But you will see in the final product what I'm talking about. And here I am just once again like mixing a kind of purple color. So it's the blue and the pink. And I really like purple. Sailor Saturn is not technically part of this. I just really like purple. And, you know, Sailor Moon herself technically isn't really represented here, because she doesn't have like a base color per se. And so here I am going in with some detail work. So I'm doing slightly darker colors towards the center of the flower, and then I'll eventually be adding some little shiny bits to the basically opposite edges of where the shadows are. This just adds some depth and kind of breaks up the individual petals, I would say, and gives it more of that, you know, geometric shape to remind people that this is a crystal. It's not just a flower. And here's where I add the little shiny bits. I think this is probably the most fun part of this project. I don't know why, but I just really like the depth that the little shiny bits added. And like the line was so time consuming, and then just blocking in the colors and like, trying to get them like that perfect color that I wanted was kind of not annoying, but also time consuming and a little like nerve-wracking, where I'm like, I just want it nice, because like this is just, plain foam. It's just kind of blending it out, and I feel like it really made a big difference in just the overall shape and look of the crystals. Adding the outline was also nerve-wracking because I could just ruin hours of work with one wrong move. But overall, I think it looks really great and looks particularly good at night because of the, glow-in-the-dark paint that I used. I had messed up anyway, which I alluded to earlier. I had actually spilled some paint on the jacket, but I ingeniously covered it up by adding the 7 rainbow crystals to the design, which works out anyway since Serena/Usagi's birthday is in June, which is Pride Month, and Serena/Usagi is a known ally, so Moon Pride. And here is a look at the final outfit. I used the Comic-Con look again for Monsterpalooza 2025, and I got to meet Doug Jones. He would make such a great Negaverse monster, because he's just so good at like all the makeup and prosthetics and stuff, and it was a great honor to meet the wonderful Doug Jones. And that's it for this video. See you in the next one. Bye!